Mr. G here. We're discussing drones in art and how it applies to STEAM in the art classroom. Alright, so let's start off with some basics. Here we have me on a plane. This was for when I was doing my trip to Boston for the National Art Education Conference that I did some videos on, so you can check those out. But things that I want you guys to understand, that as you guys are dealing with drones, there's more to than just going up, taking a shot, taking a picture, taking a video of something. There's more substance to what you're trying to learn and trying to engage with the students. So here we are, just a simple pan shot of going past the airport. You see all these different planes. You have the perspective in there. You have the artwork that's on the planes themselves. Southwest, we just saw a second ago, the different colors. Spirit over there in the background. Once you're going through what a plane does and getting that lift, getting that different perspective of the landscape that we're looking at. Now, as an airplane takes lift into the sky, you can notice that on the wing of the plane, you have different flaps. Those flaps change the air direction of how the air moves across the airplane itself. We're getting these wonderful STEAM topics in our discussion as we're going through this video. So think about what science and engineering aspects you can also add into that. Now, as we start to shift and we start to come out of the clouds, and we're looking at those different perspectives and how things change for us. I love these shots way up in the sky, just above the clouds. Now, as a remote pilot myself, you cannot go above 400 feet. These clouds that we were flying through are in that 1,000 to 5,000 range. But things I want you guys to notice is when we're looking at these kinds of landscapes and we're looking at these kinds of shots, one of the best artists that you can tie into this is Mark Rothko, American artist who created large blocks of color in his paintings and the way that the colors stacked one on top of another to create the most simplistic version of an image for the audience to perceive what is going on. So here you have very limited amounts of color, just some amounts of texture. If the wing of the plane was not in the shot, it'd almost be kind of hard to tell exactly what this is, because you have just that open air, that open perspective of just the puffiness of the clouds, a little bit of light coming from the left side there, the pink hues that are in the middle, the light pink hues, and a little bit of blue there at the very top of the screen that you have in that image. Now, one of those things for the test that you need to know is how to read an air map. These are air maps, so we have the city of Atlanta over there, and I wanted to compare that with an actual map of Atlanta so you guys could see the map of the streets. So we got 85, 285, 75, and you can kind of see where those would fall on the map next to it. So, but this is the air map that we would look at as a pilot, and having to know the different aspects in it. Now, one of those things that I do definitely like to go over with my students when we talk about this in class, because we do use drone stuff when I'm teaching them different levels of different things. There's so many numbers, there's so many lines, there's so many different colors that you really have to know what each and every single piece of that is, because the blue lines mean something from the red lines, the blue dash lines mean something from the red dash lines, and the blue dash line is something different from a solid blue line. There are all these different little bits of information that are in these images that you have to be able to discern and decipher what they mean. Case in point, in the dead center, you have the Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. Off to the side there, you have a couple numbers. One of them says 125 over SFC, which means 12,500 feet. They cut off the two zeros at the end. Most numbers are, the last two numbers are zeros, and they're usually cut off. Down to surface, which is the SFC letters there. And on the other side, you have the 125 over 25, which means 12,500 feet down to the floor of 2,500 feet. Now, those things tell you at what is the floor of that tier of airspace that is being controlled by Hartsfield-Jackson, though. So you have to understand what those things mean, so where you can fly, where you can't fly. One of the big things is you're not supposed to fly within 5 miles of an actual airport itself. And looking at this map, you're like, where can I fly? There's like nowhere around Atlanta that I can fly. Actually, you can. There's a lot of different places, but it's one of those things where you have to be able to know what airspace you could legally operate in. Now, once you've get past the big conundrum of what are these things that I gotta learn for flight, we now have to talk about the artistic end of it. So one, we did the science, we did the engineering aspect, now we're going into the arts. So cinematography is the thing that I really deep dive into in my own work. There's other aspects that you can do. You can do 3D modeling, painting, and decorating, creating a different design on your drone. This could be from the letters, it could be from your call numbers, because you do have to have your license number on the drone. These are all little tidbits of things that you need to have. But there's the cinematography is just one of those great aspects. So here we have what I like, the lone man, and you have this is one of my coaches at my school, and as he's walking around on the pitch, on the field, you can see his expanse over that landscape. And as an artist, we're looking at how will our subject matter compensate the space that they are taking up. What aspects of the things, the stories that they're trying to tell, seeing them in that location, in that space, how is that getting more gravity to their overall situation? How are we then quantifying that in our picture? How are we using that to tell the story? And using the drone to give us that visual, give us those perspectives. Now, as you're going through and you're thinking about your composition, thinking about the shot that you want to get, you also have to think about the balance. How are you going to balance the images? How are you going to balance your colors? How are you going to balance the things that you're going to be flying over, flying around, flying through in some cases? But all these different things and how you're interacting with those spaces plays into the stories that you're trying to tell. Now, one of those fun bits of color theory that we can get into as the seasons change, as foliage is changing throughout the year. Here we have a fall shot, so you can see the leaves are changing color to have those nice fall colors, the reds, the crimson reds, the burnt oranges, the yellows, the greens that are turning into browns with the backdrop of the black top concrete around them. Really gives us that juxtaposition to the image that we're trying to capture, so that we can see not only the time of year, but we have all these different colors that play off of each other to create much more interesting composition. So as we descend in between the buses play off on those yellows of the buses, play off on the fall foliage, and you have those different colors played against in between. And again, I got to go back to one of those key things about flying a drone and looking at footage that I've shot, looking at and analyzing footage that I've had my students shoot, and seeing how they're placating, not just to give that overall single shot from above. You're not looking at something from a very high vantage point, or you're not doing just a zoom down singular shot down around at the bottom. You're using the camera to go all around an object. So if you're doing this as a sculpture, or doing this as a three-dimensional design aspect, and how you are designing something in the round, how are you viewing that piece of artwork from multiple sides to showcase everything that you need to know and understand about the artwork that was created. Now again, as you guys are shooting your different kinds of scenes, think about how those colors can be affected and how they can be changed. Now, this can be done in post. I try and do as much work with my camera as possible whenever I'm shooting. This can be done with ND filters. It can be done with gels. If you don't know what any of those are, I'll try and make a video on it. Just put something down in the comments to let me know that you want to see that video. And those change the coloring of your shot as you're shooting it. So without having to do a post-process changes. So again, looking at these shots, looking at the composition, let's talk about the line. How can we use the line of objects around us? So here we have the football field in front of us. As I'm panning across to get that nice scoping, sweeping shot of the field, the different people that are on the field, the things of what the students are going to be doing outside on the field that day, that's telling the story without having me to use, in this case I'm using words to tell you, but for most of the time it's just giving that single shot to showcase how big the field is, or the students that are about to participate in something. And like I said before, doing that static shot from above is always kind of a boring thing to look and watch. But to have a shot where you have movement integrating into the frame, so as characters are moving through the image, as we have our runners here racing down the path, to having them being shot from above to give it those different changes, give it those different elements to the shot. It gives it a much stronger element and a much stronger realization of what is being shown to us. So now we're going to switch gears. We're going to talk about the drone itself and things that you need to know about the flight of drones and how drones fly. So here we have a nice static shot of a drone outside of I think this was LA, front of mine shot. And most drones that you get, you have your basic, it's the drone and it's the remote. So here, the Tele-Drone, these are made by IBM. It's a push with them and DJI to actually learn how to code. Right now, I think that you can only win these in a raffle. You can't go out and buy them. I'm trying to get a couple myself. But then there's an FPV drone which has cameras attached to it. They're much smaller. These are quad racers, like this one, where you have the really dense controller with a nice large 7-inch mounted viewfinder on top there, so you can see the perspective of the camera, what it's throwing back out. Now, the blades are most quads, and you'll hear them referred to as quads in drones a lot because there are 4 different rotors that are power for the drone. Now on here, the blades that are spinning around that, they are spinning out of velocity. I'm going to zoom in here on this one section of the Mavic remote. You can see that right there in the top right hand corner you have the velocity of speed, the number of rotations per minute that the motors are churning out. These ones are churning out about 550 rotations per minute, it's per minute. And that's going at such a high speed. You don't want to touch that. I have seen horror stories. I've heard horror stories from friends and colleagues that got hit by a drone. So make sure that you are being safe and being cautious in the way that you're flying. Now, some of you have never flown a drone before. We got a couple diagrams that we're going to look at. For this piece, on the left-hand side, you have the remote control itself. On the right side, you have a very simple line illustration of the drone itself. So on the controller, on your left stick, and that's what the little joysticks are called, they're just called sticks. The left stick controls the altitude. So if you throttle high, pushing the stick up, it's going to raise the drone up in space. If you throttle low, you bring it down, you're pull down on the stick, you're giving it less power to churn those motors, so it's going to descend in space. It also, if you turn from left to right, it changes the yaw. The yaw is the drone itself panning and tilting. The stick on the right, your right stick, controls the direction in space. So pressing north, pressing forward with the stick is going to drive forward. Pressing back is going to drive backwards. Right is right, left is left. Nothing new there. The trick is this: most drones are not built to fly to the direction of the pilot. They are designed to fly the direction of the front of the drone, which means if you launch the drone and you're standing looking face to face with the camera, and you press forward, that drone is going to fly at your face because it is being pitched forward, so it's going to fly forward in space and not fly away from you. You have to be conscientious of, as you're driving that drone through the sky, you need to know its relative position in space to understand how it's going to fly, where it's going to fly, and where you'll run into something. This is where most common accidents happen. Anytime that I'm teaching this, I teach all my students to make sure that you are watching the drone, you are not watching the image on the screen. I always tell them to practice first when we get a cheaper version of a drone, one of the lesser grade drones, and I really push for those because, especially if you've never flown before, get one of those cheap drones. They're like between $50 and $100. Yeah, it's a lot of money for some of us. Some of us it's not. You make that decision for yourself, but a drone that is $100 and you crash it is not nearly as painful as having a $1,200 drone that you've crashed. Once you start paying the big bucks and you get like a 4K camera on there, it's got a 30-minute flight time. It has different home location points, auto flight options, all those bells and whistles on it. That price is going to go up exponentially. And when you crash one of those, you run into those issues where you've damaged it. You ran into a tree and it got lodged in a tree, got stuck in a tree, and you broke some propellers, you broke some props on it. That's when those drone crashes really hurt. I don't. That's not fun for me. But I've had a cheapo drone where it's like, yes, $70 to $100, one of the toy drones. I've got that thing stuck in a tree several times, and I've had to use a slingshot to bring it down and a fishing pole to fish the drone out of the sky with. And I've had that thing crash into the ground at full speed, full weight, and it doesn't faze me in the slightest, because those drones really take a licking before they quit. But the really expensive drones, one small ding and they're kind of shot, and that's the little things that you have to be aware of. So as you guys are flying, and as you guys are considering buying a drone and using it, go with a cheap one first, crash it a few times, figure out how it works. So before you spend some real money, the pain is not going to be nearly as problematic for you. Now, like I said, for the ND filter, an ND filter is a disc of glass or plastic, depending on your price point, and they are different stops of light to the camera. Now, the best way to think of an ND filter, as how putting sunglasses onto your camera. So most ND filters look like a pair of sunglasses, but it's just one disc. And I like a variable ND filter myself, so I can give different stops all at once. So just buy one piece of equipment instead of different ones. For a drone, however, you do have to buy several different step attachments, and my kit usually runs from I think an ND of 4 all the way up to ND 32, so it gives me 4 stops of light to 32 stops of light, and gives me those variables in between. You can easily Google ND filters for drones, and you'll find the right ones that fit for yours. But I definitely say use this, because most of us, if we're going to fly about the midday time frame, and that is really bad as far as really good light. However, it's usually when the conditions are best to fly around, where the wind is usually a little more mild in the middle of the day, but the sun and the relationship to the sun in the sky is really, really awful. So you need those ND filters to stop down the levels of light, so that your shutter speed is more applicable to the scene that you're shooting, because most film and most footage is shot at 24 frames a second. So if you are in a super bright and sunny day out there, and you need to be able to stop that down to 24 shots per second to give it that nice smooth movement, so that if your movement it's not super choppy, and you definitely don't want too much light stop down, because it becomes like the Saving Private Ryan D-Day scene where it's really choppy, and it's like when they were cutting it together, they just took a bunch of pictures and they were just kind of slamming them together. So lots of great information. I'm going to bow out on you guys today by leaving you a little mini video that's shot in the country. Got a relative who lives out in the sticks. There's like nothing around, so it's lots of good fly space for me. Just a quick video that I shot in the country, and hope you guys enjoy it. As always, I'll go ahead and wrap it up with you here, which is, don't forget to take care of your homework, and just like, subscribe, share on all the various platforms. As always, if you guys have a question, please raise your hand down to comments below, and I'll be happy to answer those questions, get back to you guys. If you have any tips, questions, or concerns, or anything else, just leave those down in the comments as well. As always, I will see you guys next class. Until then, later guys.